Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Graphic Thoughts Podcast, the 28th episode of the Graphic Thoughts Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Panel, with my adorable co-host, Crypto the Super Dog. He's just staring at me now. He's normally asleep when I'm recording these, but he happens to be awake right now, so we're just kind of hoping he's choosing on his toys in peace and is a bit quiet about it. But I'm excited as hell for this episode. This is part 2 of One Piece. We did the first 3 books in the last episode. We will be doing book 4, 5, and 6 in this episode. Right off the gate, I want to thank everybody who has been listening to the Hulk bonus episode part 1 on YouTube. It is kind of blowing up. It's doing pretty damn good. I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of work into it, and the second part will be going up. Well, by the time you're hearing this, that should hopefully already be up. So be excited for that. I'm hella excited for that. And yeah, that's just about it. I don't really want to do a whole bunch of yapping. I normally do a whole bunch of yapping before these episodes. I just want to thank everybody that's been listening. Thank all the future listeners. And let's jump right into breakdown of books 4, 5, and 6 of One Piece. We're going to jump into issue 4 right away. This volume is kind of the heart of the Syrup Village battle. Up to now, Usopp mostly, like I've said, has been comic relief. The boy that cried wolf kind of thing. This volume very much proves who he really is. The volume contains chapter 27 through 35. This is one of the cruelest parts of the story, in my opinion. For years, Usopp has run through town yelling pirates are coming, and for now that pirates are actually coming, nobody listens. It's very, very much the boy that cried wolf situation. His reputation as a liar obviously being the biggest obstacle for people to believe him. If he was more honest or more believable, then obviously more people would have trusted his word, but due to his lying, nobody's going to believe him. This leads us directly to the shore battle, where Captain Karu, the butler, his crew plans to land on a specific beach. This leads our party. Obviously, we have Usopp, Luffy, Zolo, and I forget the girl's name for some reason right now. They realize their plan. Obviously, they want to try to go to the beach. They end up going to the wrong place. This obviously leads to Karu's crew being able to get farther in their plan than obviously they originally wanted to let them. This is kind of classic in early stories, especially with teams of this nature, just trying to establish that they're not really established as a team yet. They've never worked together. They're still learning how to do it. This leads directly into the introduction of Django. Django is basically a hypnotist. He has a very, very interesting look. I'm hoping to be able to put him in the thumbnail for the YouTube video. Django basically hypnotizes his own crew. Suddenly, the Black Cat pirates become much stronger than they were originally. The problem is Django is terrible at hypnosis. He often accidentally hypnotizes himself. These scenes end up being very funny, but they also show how chaotic Karu's crew really is. They're not the best put together crew. Karu very much just has a bunch of random people that are just kind of shit. Like I said before, this is very much Usopp's big volume. He gets beaten up repeatedly. He gets scared repeatedly. But he keeps fighting anyway because he realizes that's what he has to do. And that's kind of the point. Usopp is never written as fearless. He's written as someone who acts despite being terrified, which is a very strong character trait for a hero archetype, obviously. I thought they did a really good job introducing Usopp and then getting you to care about Usopp in this story, or the last couple stories, and then into this story. Obviously, I do know that there's a bit of the fan base that isn't the biggest fan of Usopp. My buddy specifically who got me into these books doesn't like Usopp, but I really like Usopp. This is when the truth about Kuro is finally revealed. Koro finally reveals his real philosophy. He hates being a pirate, he hates being hunted, he hates attention. His plan was to fake his death, become Kaya's trusted servant, inherit her fortune, live comfortably forever. The only thing that bothered me about this plan was something they revealed either after this or before this, I can't remember. Karu didn't plan on killing Kaya's parents. It just was kind of a happy accident. They ended up getting killed on some sort of accident or whatever the fuck happened to them. They died. But he said he didn't actually plan on killing them, so I don't know how he planned on inheriting her stuff if he wasn't planning on killing them. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But unlike Luffy, Kuro sees freedom as comfort and safety. Luffy sees freedom as adventure. This contrast is very intentional, kind of showing the difference, obviously, between the main villain and the hero of our story. This leads directly into Luffy versus Kuro, or at least the beginning of it. Luffy finally reaches Kuro. The fight is messy and very personal. Kuro believes pirates are fools. Luffy believes that dreams matter. Obviously, his dream is to be the king of the pirates. And by the end of the volume, the final confrontation is very, very much underway. We see these two very powerful characters scrapping. And Kuro kind of introduces or shows his main look, I guess. He pulls these fucking like claws out, crazy sharp knives and shit. But it's basically all for volume 4. Obviously, it shows the beginning of the fight with the Kuro's crew, them getting to the beach, the initial confrontation with Kuro and Luffy, and a lot of characterization for Usopp. Usopp very much came off as the main character of this story. And obviously that is the goal. They very much have done good with introducing Luffy's crew up to this point and making them all matter. And they've done the exact same thing here with Usopp, so still can't complain. But that does lead us directly into volume 5, which is chapter 36 to 44. This finishes the Syrup Village arc and introduces Verity and Sanji, who becomes much more important later. This is kind of the first time readers see these characters or meet these characters. So we'll jump into that in a moment here. Alrighty, so let's jump right into issue number 5. This is, like I said, a very important issue. This introduces Sanji, who is one of the main crew members, becomes one of the main crew members. In the beginning of the book, they take off from, I forget the name of the place, but where they got Usopp from. They have 2 boats. They have their boat, and then they have, god damn, I can't think of her name right now. Nami. They have Nami's boat also, because she rides on a separate boat. I don't actually like that very much. I think the biggest part of these beginning of the books is showing them as a real crew, a real team. And I think her not being on the same boat as them kind of ruins that a little bit. As far as I am, they might have made up for that a bit, so I don't actually know. I'm gonna stay open-minded, but at least where I am, I don't like that very much. But them having their first boat is kind of a good symbol of them being a real pirate crew. I forget what it's called, the flag, but they get their own flag up. I'm gonna have to look that up here in a minute. I thought I wrote it in my notes, but I can't seem to find it. It's a Jolly Roger. I fucking knew that. It pisses me off that I couldn't think of that. They get Luffy's Jolly Roger up with the hat, show that it's him. We get introduced to Donnie and Yasako, 2 old friends of Zoro. They are bounty hunters. They also introduce an important idea, the Grand Line. The Grand Line is basically where everybody is trying to get to. That's where the One Piece is supposedly at. That's what everybody all the pirates rather, are trying to get to. But they also introduced the idea that the Grand Line is very terrifying. For the first time, people who have actually been near it explain how dangerous it actually is. And this is the first time that it gets introduced as dangerous to our protagonist, really. I think another interesting thing, and I'll jump into this now because I don't think I jumped into it in the original episode on the first three books. I think it's truly amazing storytelling that they have still yet to, like, they haven't finished the series. They're still going for since the 80s now. Um, we don't know what the One Piece is still. This entire time, they've been hunting for this thing that we have zero concept of an idea, even the iota of an idea of what it is. And yet we're still reading, we're still buying, and we're still waiting for the story to be finished to find out what the One Piece is. And that's honestly just amazing. Obviously, there's similar things with like Marvel Comics. People are still reading Marvel Comics, they're still reading DC Comics. But it's not a one continuous story. This story has been going since the 80s to now, and it's still continuing. I think Oda, the person that wrote it, is saying that he does want to end it soon just so people won't die without finishing the story, basically, which I'm sure a lot of people have done anyway, which is a cool concept. But I just think it's so amazing that a thing can go for that long and not be finished, not be done, not be bastardized, any of that nature. People still love the story. So much so that they made the live action One Piece, which is obviously different but very similar in the same way. And I think it did a very good. I don't. Obviously, live action anime or mangas have been not very good in the past. So I think it opened the door to us getting better ones because of how well they did this one and well conceived and well it was received by the fans. So I think that's really exciting, especially since like my favorite anime is probably Dragon Ball. So that'd be really cool to see a live action sort of thing. And obviously they've tried to do live action things with other things of that nature. Obviously He-Man just got another live action movie that apparently wasn't very good, but that's got to be on the point. I think it just kind of broadens the horizon and opens up the door for other things of that nature, which is always good. More creativity, more things being created. But yeah, I've always just thought, since my buddy introduced these stories to me, I've always just thought it's so amazing that the story's been going for so long and is yet to finish. And it's one continuous story for this long of a time. The crew ends up reaching the floating restaurant Baridia. Probably fucked that up, my apologies. This begins one of the best early arcs in the story, in my opinion, and leads directly to Sanjay's introduction. At first, he seems simple. He's a great cook, loves women, constantly argues, but Oda quickly shows what kind of matters. A starving pirate named Jin arrives. Most people want him thrown out. Jin is a very dangerous pirate. He's killed a lot of people. They want him thrown out. They realize that if they give him food and save him, then it can be really bad for them. Sanjay feeds him. No questions asked. No conditions. This very much tells you who Sanjay is as a person, as a character. Obviously, he's one of those people who will give you the shirt off his back, not expecting anything in return. And I think that is what kind of brought or kind of got Luffy to want him to be part of his crew. Luffy very much is looking for specific types of people or specific differences in people, and he looks past those and sees the good in people, for lack of a better term. And Sanji's one of those people that you don't really have to look past a lot of the stuff. He is just kind of good. And I think that fits very well in Luffy's crew, especially with what Sanjay ends up going to show us later on. I love Sanji. He's one of my favorites. He's in my top. Obviously, the crew's not that large, but he's in my top four. Obviously, it goes Zolo, Luffy, Usopp, and then probably him. So I've always been a big fan of him, and I think they did a really good job introducing him and just showing who he is as a character before showing anything else. Another pretty important person that we get introduced to in this story is Don Krieg. Don Krieg is another very, very powerful pirate. Shows up at the Barita very hurt, very just out of it. His fleet originally consists of 50 ships, thousands of crew members, heavy weapons and armor. He believes that victory belongs to whoever has the greatest military strength, not the greatest courage or determination. He goes to the Grand Line. Krieg decides to enter the Grand Line, believing his massive fleet can conquer it. Instead, disaster strikes almost immediately. His entire armada is attacked by a single man, Dracul Myhawk. We get introduced to him in a little bit. I definitely fucked that name up. Myhawk destroys nearly every ship in Krieg's fleet. Out of about 50 ships, only Krieg's flagship escapes. This is one of the first major world building moments in One Piece, and it also shows that everything that the Straw Hats have experienced in the East Blue is only a tiny fraction of the world's true power. Obviously, they've ran into a pretty good amount of powerful characters at this point, and then this very much just shows that it doesn't really mean anything. And this leads us, obviously, to Don Krieg showing up at the Barita. Like I said, very hungry, very hurt. Krieg and his surviving crew are starving. Many of them are close to death and or drifting at sea. At first, Krieg appears completely defeated. He's weak, exhausted, barely able to stand. He begs for food. Everyone at the Burrito knows Krieg is dangerous. The cooks argue that feeding him is a terrible idea, similar to the last pirate, but on a much larger scale at this point. Sanji very much disagrees. He prepares a full meal and serves it to Krieg. Sanji explains that he knows what starvation feels like, and he refuses to let anyone die of hunger, even an enemy. This moment, once again, very, very much shows the character of Sanji, and it also kind of shows or gets a bit into his backstory a little bit, or a little insight rather into his backstory than actually giving any details, which I thought was cool. The instant he finishes eating, Krieg drops the act. He announces that he intends to take Burrito for himself. His goals are simple: steal the restaurant, take all of its food, kill anyone who resists, and use Verita as a base to return to the Grand Line. He never intended to repay Sanji's kindness. To Krieg, compassion is a weakness that can be exploited. This leads directly to book number 6, which will be the fight between Sanji, the Straw Hat Kids, or Straw Hat Pirates, and the rest of the crew of the Burrito against Don Krieg's crew. And that's really where the story gets very big. Obviously, there's a lot of characters that get introduced in this book, and then the stories just gets bigger and bigger from here. It grows and grows. I love, love, love how they've introduced the world up to this point. Every character feels like they actually have a place in this world, and they mean something rather than just are existing in this world, which I think is cool. With the books of this nature, I think of My Hero Academia, for example. There's a lot of characters in those books, especially in the beginning in the training school, and I don't think they did as good of a job as fleshing them out and just making them matter, for lack of a better term. Obviously, it's not a fair comparison. There is a lot more main characters in that book to focus on than there is in this. Obviously, there's just the main crew, and then occasionally there will be a person introduced or just a big bad introduced. But for the most part, there isn't, 20 to 30 characters that you have to remember at each time. In My Hero Academia, there is. That is a lot of characters to write for and fit into the story in an impactful way. So obviously, it is a bit harder, but I have always gagaed about how well these books do that in general, and I think specifically in the beginning, they do such a good job with it. Alrighty, so let's just jump right into book 5 or book 6 now. Obviously, we left off book 5 with Don Krieg getting ready to attack. Obviously, his people, they fed him and his people, and now they have power. Then everything changes. Myhawk arrives. Myhawk appears. Up to this point, Zoro has been portrayed as incredibly strong. The strongest swordsman are all around, the strongest swordsman we've seen. He's taken down just about everybody that he's came into contact with that he's needed to. Obviously, he had trouble with the last guy, but Luffy did too. This is where all of that changes. Mohawk makes him look absolutely helpless. In this, I've been saying we were going to get to this for the longest time. This has always bothered me. So let me just explain it. Mohawk basically has a necklace, I think it was, with a knife on it that's like not even 2 inches. And he basically beats Zoro's ass with Zoro trying like full force. And him barely putting any effort in completely destroys Zoro. Makes him look like absolutely nothing. And don't get me wrong, My buddy tried to explain this to me, and that's not the issue. I completely understand why they did it. The reason they made Zoro look so weak and the guy look so strong was to get over the fact that we have literally seen nothing yet with the power scaling in One Piece. We've literally seen nothing with how powerful these characters can be. We've seen nothing at all. They can be so much more powerful. I completely understand what they were showing. They were showing how that Zoro, you think Zoro is good, but he has nothing on someone like this. Completely understand it. My only issue, I think they went too far with it. I don't think they needed to make Zolo. I keep calling him Zoro. It's Zolo to me. But I don't think they had to make him look completely infant and just small and weak and just absolutely nothing because of how strong they made him so far. I think they could have gotten the same exact point across with him just being able to put up even the slightest more of a fight, even the slightest. I don't think they needed to make him just not really even be able to do a thing. That really bothered me, but it also could just be a bias thing with me liking Zolo so much. I do understand why they did it. It makes sense why they did it. And obviously, with what happens later, it's going to make even more sense, but I don't know. It always bothered me. I know people are going to disagree. My buddy vigorously disagrees, but I don't know. It's always, always, always bothered me. This loss obviously very, very, very much affected Zoro. After losing, Zoro looks at Luffy and makes a promise to never lose again. This is an oath. The volume title refers to this. It's not just a cool line, it's Zoro redefining his dream. Before he wanted to be the strongest, now he understands how far away from that goal he really is. The end of the volume kind of leaves us with, well, actually, I need to get to the Don Creek part, but the end of this is volume 4, Zolo and RT guys. Obviously, Zoro is badly injured. Mohawk leaves. Don Krieg is preparing for war. I guess we don't really need to jump into that yet. Don Krieg is preparing for war, and Luffy is preparing to fight. The crew has now met their first truly legendary figure, and the story has shown that the world is much bigger than East Blue. They showed that there's a whole bunch more out there. Obviously, it introduced a whole bunch of characters. We got Sanji, we got Don Krieg, and we got Mohawk. All of these characters are important characters and will go on to be more important later on. Obviously, with the war from Don Krieg coming, and with Zolo obviously needing, I mean, he's going to have to get his lick back. He's going to have to take this guy back on Mohawk at the end of the story at some point. So they left a whole bunch of stuff open. Obviously, Luffy and the rest of the crew are looking towards the war against Don Krieg, like I already mentioned. Like I've already mentioned, also, they've done such a good job building this world. I've been thinking about how, like, if there's really any other anime or manga that compares to how well this world is built, and I really don't think so. I think Bleach and or Full Metal Alchemist, or sorry, from what I've read, Bleach and Full Metal Alchemist are the only ones that come close. Probably Alchemist more than Bleach. Just with giving each character a meaning and a reason to be in the story rather than just being there. I think Bleach also does a very good job with it, but maybe not as much. And then I've already said what I said about My Hero Academia. And then Attack on Titan has a whole bunch of mess of characters that just don't really fucking matter all that much. So that's not a good one. And then comics are very similar. I don't think there's as many examples in comics of just background characters in actual like big. How would I explain it? Like, for example, everyone in the Justice League matters in some way, and some stories they'll matter a little bit more than other members. And then it's always kind of like that. Obviously, there's smaller characters, smaller villains, smaller roles, but that's not necessarily the same as having just background filler characters. They have obviously like a thug here, a thug there, but I wouldn't even necessarily consider that the same thing because you're not really seeing them more than just a page or two. The background characters in a classroom scene or something in an anime just has so many more of that kind of character. But what do I know? I don't know if I mentioned it, but that is the end for the first 6 books of One Piece. obviously a whole bunch was introduced. We got the entirety of the, or at least for what we have so far, of the crew. Obviously, we have Luffy. He is the captain. We have Nami. She would be the tracker. We have Zolo. He's the muscle or just strength, I guess. Obviously, he's the master swordsman, although we just saw how that played out. We have Usopp, very much the heart of the team, emotional support. And then we obviously have Sanji. Sanji is not technically completely in the crew yet. He later on does join fully. Sanji will become a crew member, but as of right now, this is our entire crew. We have 4 of them. Like I said, they've done a very good job building this world, very good job telling this story. I'm excited to get to the next 3 books in a future episode. We are going to take a break from it for a little bit, but I'm very excited to jump into those. I do have to read a bit more of those. I'm only on book like 12, or I think actually book 14, but I am excited to jump back into those. And I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown of the first 3 books. There was a lot to fit in there, so I had to try and shorten it as best I can, or could rather. But I hope you guys enjoyed everything that was fit into the story and everything that I broke down and talked about. I have a little surprise for you guys, just kind of a couple things I wanted to announce, and then also a little surprise breakdown at the end of this one. The one thing I wanted to announce is that we probably will be moving to like Saturdays for episodes going up. Obviously, this episode is, I don't know what day this episode is going up. It is Wednesday today. The episode is supposed to be up Monday, so or last Friday, so it'll probably up just this Friday. Or just take a couple days off. But the episode of the bonus episode, rather, for the Hulk is also coming out this week coming up. Or this week, so I hope you guys enjoy that also. But the extra breakdown is going to be the Superman manga, just the first book of the Superman manga. Only because honestly, I just read it and I really want to talk about it. So we'll jump into that real quick after a brief intermission, and then I will thank you guys like I normally do, and then we'll get out of here. It's going to be a relatively shorter episode today than it normally is, or it has been rather. Obviously, I've been fitting a lot of shit into episodes and a lot of bonus stuff in episodes, and or just doing long episodes in general, stories that are longer and need to be more of a story told. So this one's going to be a bit shorter. But let's jump right into the first book. Well, after this intermission, we'll jump right into the first book of the Superman manga. Alright, so jumping right into the Superman manga. It's a very simple premise, but it's pretty fun. Clark Kent is working as a reporter in Japan between reporting assignments and saving the world as Superman. He has one favorite hobby: finding great, inexpensive restaurants to eat lunch. Every chapter revolves around Superman trying a different Japanese meal while balancing his superhero responsibilities. Unlike most Superman stories, there isn't a supervillain trying to conquer the world. Every chapter, the conflict usually comes from Clark trying to squeeze a meal into his busy day or having his lunch interrupted by an emergency. Like I said, it's a very, very, very simple concept, but it's very entertaining. One recurring joke is that Superman can cross the planet in seconds, so he has access to restaurants anywhere. He can save a satellite, stop a volcano, or rescue someone from an accident, then still make it back in time for lunch. The manga treats this as very just perfectly normal. Obviously, this is something that Superman can do and does do, so obviously it's just very comedy centric. Clark the food critic. One of the funniest parts of the manga, in my opinion, is just how seriously Clark takes the food. He notices the texture of the rice, how the meat is cooked, the flavor of the broth, whether ingredients are fresh, and how much food you get for the price. Instead of analyzing an alien invasion, he spends several pages thinking about why one restaurant's sauce is slightly better than another restaurant's sauce. Like, it's just so silly to take this ultra powerful, amazing character and basically bring him to Japan and make him an all powerful food critic. Like, it's just so comical. I found it's a very short story too. There are a couple of different parts, but this is just what we're gonna focus on today. I just thought it was very entertaining. I don't know why I thought it was as entertaining as it is, but it's very, very funny. The humor very much comes from seeing someone with godlike powers, like I just said, obsess over ordinary things. Superman's personality is a bit different in this. The manga keeps Superman very close to his classic comic book personality, although it's a bit, like I said, a bit different. He's polite, he thanks restaurant workers, he never acts like he's above anyone else. Even though he could eat anywhere in the world, he enjoys simple meals that ordinary people eat every day. This very much reinforces one of Superman's defining traits. Despite his incredible power, he genuinely likes living among people. He likes being a human, for lack of a better term. Most chapters introduce a different Japanese meal of some sort. I'm gonna fuck most of these up. We have Gideon or beef bowls. We have ramen, curry, hamburg steaks, and other everyday Japanese dishes. The manga explains what makes each meal special, often describing ingredients and cooking techniques. It's kind of almost part food guide or cookbook and part comedy manga. Lois Lane appears also throughout the volume. She remains focused on journalism and often wonders where Clark disappears to. The manga plays with the classic Superman secret identity joke. Readers know Clark is sneaking off to become Superman or sometimes just to find lunch. Other characters usually have no idea in any way. Several meals are interrupted by Clark having to become Superman to save someone. There aren't always huge disasters, sometimes they're just everyday emergencies. The joke is that Superman never complains, he simply saves the day and then goes right back to trying to finish his lunch before it gets cold. The manga occasionally references other DC heroes. The focus remains solely mainly on Clark, but readers get reminders that this is still the DC universe. These cameos are generally brief and played for humor rather than actual action. I think this manga matters because rather than asking what if Superman fought Darkseid again, this manga asks what does Superman enjoy when he isn't saving the world. It's just a different side of the character that you don't see, and I think it's just a little silly, fun little thing to read. Especially with this is kind of a silly way to say it, but just how shitty the world is. It's fun to just read a simple little small story like this that just kind of makes you chuckle to yourself for a couple minutes and then go on with your day. The answer is surprisingly ordinary. He likes good food. He enjoys discovering local restaurants. He appreciates hardworking cooks. That makes him feel very human despite being a Kryptonian. Volume 1 isn't building toward one giant climax like a story like One Piece or something of that nature. Instead, it's about slowing down. It suggests that even the world's greatest hero needs ordinary moments, sharing a meal, appreciating good cooking, and connecting with everyday life. That's kind of what makes the series charming, and it's also kind of what makes Clark who he is. Trying to raise the stakes, or it isn't rather trying to raise the stakes. It's showing that Clark Kent's humanity is found as much in a bowl of ramen or a beef bowl as it is in stopping a disaster. Which again, I think is just an amazing way to tell his kind of story. People always say that Superman's overpowered, Superman's boring, blah 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 blah. But I've always stood by the fact that it depends on who's writing for him. Some people can write such that character so fucking well. Think about All Star Superman, Superman All for the Seasons. There's been so many good Superman stories, and this is another really really good Superman story. I'm currently reading Superman the Kryptonian Spectrum outside of the podcast. At some point, I'll probably do an episode for it. But that's another really, really good one. That does a really good job with the character and doesn't make the character boring. So I definitely always said it's how you write for the characters. But I thought this would be a fun one to just kind of throw at the end of the podcast, also because it is very different from the One Piece manga that we've been doing for the episodes, so I thought it was kind of nice little change up, but that will do it for the Superman manga. Like I said, it's just a fun little story to get you a little chuckle, nice little moment of your day, and then you can just kind of move on. Alrighty, but that just about does do it for the episode. Like always, I want to thank everybody who has been listening on Spotify, on YouTube. We've been getting a bit of copyright strikes due to the music, but we were changing up the music for this episode that you'll be hearing it. So I'm excited for that, and hopefully that does stop. I would never planned on using copyrighted music. Where I got it from, it said it wasn't copyrighted. It said it was free use, so that's why I put it in there, and then I found out after that it's copyrighted. So hopefully they just kind of let that go and that doesn't get me in any hot water later on down the road. But we changed that up, so hopefully you'll hear that and you'll like the new music we got in there, for one. For two, I want to thank everybody for just listening. If you enjoy the podcast, enjoy listening to the podcast wherever you do listen to it, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your enemies. Telling people about the podcast is the quickest way to grow the audience, and I absolutely appreciate everybody who listens and everybody who does do that. So thank you so much to everybody. Like I said, there's a lot coming out. We got the Hulk bonus episode coming out. That'll be coming out shortly after this episode comes out, so look out for that. That'll be bonus episode part 2 for the Hulk. Just the next 20 to 30 years of his history. Important moments of his history, rather, not his entire history. Sorry, my puppy got up. And then we have... Let me look at my notes real quick. I know we have an Avengers story coming up. I know that we have a Shazam story coming up. Not necessarily a story. Well, we are doing a specific story from a year or so ago. But I also wanted to talk about his early stories prior to him being part of the DC, or being brought into the DC universe back in the early days when he was more popular than Superman for a spell. I want to talk about that era and then talk about the Shazam story that I read a couple months back. That's from, I think, 2022 or some around that nature. It's in a newer story. But a whole bunch of stuff coming. Obviously, we'll still be switching episode to episode, comic to manga. Might have to take a break from manga again shortly down the line, just because, again, I don't read as much manga as I do comics. I do want to, and I will 100% have to say also that this is completely from a podcast that I listened to that I got the idea for this is, but I wanted to just talk about the books that I'm currently reading that aren't involved in the podcast, because I read a whole bunch of fucking shit, even if it's not, having to do with the podcast. I love Bubba's. My puppy wanted to sit with me. I am currently reading, once again, Mindhunter, which is it's like an FBI book. It's about the early days of the FBI, interrogation and stuff of that nature. Very, very good book, very good show. It's on Netflix. I'm also currently reading the Sandman comics again. Doing the episode 4 got me interested in redoing that. I'm rereading Batman vs. Spawn. I thought that was always a really, really good book, and it's very beautiful, the artwork in it. And then I'm also reading The First Man of Rome, which is, I thought it was like a historical kind of book, but it is a historical kind of book, but it's completely fiction. But that's also really, really good. Only one comic book. I'm not currently reading any new mangas. I still am working on getting the newest Attack on Titan, the next Bleach, and then the next Full Metal Alchemist, so I can continue and do another episode for all of those. But honestly, some of those are just hard to come by. So, but that's enough yapping. Like I said, thank you for everybody who's listening, Spotify, YouTube, wherever the hell you're listening. And I hope everybody has a good night. I say goodbye. Crypto says goodbye. Dr. Panel out. If he'll let me get my words out. He keeps trying to kiss me. Dr. Panel out.